The time is just gone 18 minutes past 9 a.m. We continue with the broadcast. Stay with us right until 10 a.m. We've got a lot more to come from now right until 10 a.m. But right now, we're going across to be joined by geopolitical analysts. We're talking with Zaakir Ahmed Mayet. Israel starting to partition the AlAqsa Masjid. Zakir, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Jummah Mubarak to you and welcome as always.
Walaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, and shukran for having me on the show this morning.
Yes, obviously, the partitioning of the Al Aqsa Mosque is not something new as far as the Zionist entity is concerned, but we've now heard about coming from the head of the Jerusalem Committee at the Palestinian Parliament making this statement again. What do we know, Zakir?
Well, what we know is that this is an ongoing campaign. We've already seen a practical example of this in Al Khalil, Hebron, with the Ibrahimi Mosque, shortly after the massacre that was committed by an Israeli soldier and immigrant from the United States, Barak Goldstein, who was based in the informal settlement of Kiryat Arba. At the time, it was quite informal, but very heavily militarized and protected by the Israeli state. Now it has been formalized and continues to be a thorn in the side of the Palestinians consistently with numerous attacks. But this is the methodology of attrition of Israel. Shortly after the attack, they brought about the partitioning of the Ibrahimi Mosque, and this illegal settlement of Kiryat Arba was the source, and then you have closing of the Shuhada state. So what has happened here, however, is that we continue to see on a daily basis incursions into Masjid al-Aqsa under the banner of tourism, under the banner of access, under this concept that everyone needs access. However, Palestinians are not allowed to go to the Wailing Wall. It's funny how this access only moves in one direction. But I think these statements are very different now because they carry an implication. Unlike the time when the Ibrahimi Mosque was partitioned, now you have a situation where the Battle of Saif al-Quds has set down an equation. Israel now, today, when we must understand the context from which it comes, is now trying to establish its deterrence capacity and its ability to function with impunity. And I think that is what we are dealing with. The reality of the situation is that Israel will find it extremely hard to partition Masjid al-Aqsa when there is such a threat of massive regional war on its doorstep.
Well, regional and also international consequences for Israel, because I don't think people across the entire world and Muslims in particular, when it comes to Al Aqsa, and we know that Muslims are passionate about Al Aqsa. It was the first Qibla and also the third holiest site. So this obviously will not go lightly, with the rest of the Muslim Ummah. So Israel, obviously, we know they want control of Aqsa. They want control of Jerusalem, the entire city. But it is not going to be easy.
Most definitely. I think if we look at the factual record, and I'm not talking from our sources, I'm talking from Israeli military sources, Israeli analysts, political circles of Israel, they knew very well that their deterrence capacity, meaning their ability to act with impunity to brutalize the Palestinians to no consequence, those equations that they had set before had changed. The Saif al-Quds brought in a new format of warfare, according to INSS, an Israeli think tank, and which is staffed by numerous former Israeli generals, colonels within the IDF. They have said themselves that they are now facing a massive challenge under the banner of Dawla al-Wahda, the unity within the Palestinian movement. This is the first time, I would say, that we've ever seen a dramatic development like this. We have a form of unity that is developed between Islamic Jihad, the Palestinian Islamic Jihad. You have a unity with Hamas, the democratically elected representatives of the Palestinian people. You have even the largely Christian movement of George Habash, Popular Front for the Liberation of Palestine, Sarayat al-Quds, and many other factions now working under a single banner to defeat the Israeli military machine. What has also changed the dramatic situation where Israel could do as they pleased before, and now it's completely different. They reconsider every action, is the inclusion of regional players such as Hezbollah in Lebanon. You have the inclusion of Hashd al-Shabi, the popular mobilization unit of Iraq that were fighting ISIS. They have also put forces on alert and ready to assist in the situation of Palestine. You have Ansarullah in Yemen that had already sent drones to Israel and had indicated the willingness to participate immediately if Al-Quds is challenged in a way that will change its nature or limit the status and identity of Masjid al-Aqsa and Jerusalem. And then you also have the IRGC Quds force. So we have a massive coalition. It's something that we haven't seen before in recent time, and therefore I believe that any misstep by Israel will not only spell a regional war, it will spell the destruction of Israel, and that's coming from Israeli sources themselves.
Well, very, very interesting analysis coming through, Zakir, and especially now when we're talking about this unified coalition. A few weeks ago, I had a discussion with someone with regard to looking at leadership in the Muslim world, and we were talking about unity in the Muslim world. And one of the points that came out from a Professor Nidal Sakar was he says the future of leadership in the world or in the Muslim world in particular is going to come out of Palestine. And this is for the very reasons that you speak of. You speak of a unified coalition, you speak about unity in purpose. And this is something that is found lacking in other parts and other organizations within the Muslim world, including organizations like the OIC and the Arab League.
Most definitely, and I have to concur with that point. I think that, and I'm talking now from an Islamic point of view, from an Ummah point of view, I think we are faced with a serious challenge from the domestic front, on the international front, and the challenge is this: it's when we work for expediency or whether we work for principle. Even if you stand alone, even if you are a single island amongst this ocean of public opinion, you have to stand for what is right and what is correct, not what is easy and what is expedient. And this is the situation of Palestine. Before Saif al in 2021, what did we have? We had a situation of Palestine being an obliterated cause. This was the opinion of numerous analysts that we cannot continue with the Palestinian cause. There's normalization from frontline Arab states. BDS is failing because of this normalization, etc., etc. And you have this massive resurgence in defense of the first Qibla of the Muslim Ummah. And you have the defense of the place of Al-Isra al-Miraj. So you have this resurgence of identity. And what we must understand is that we must not do violence to the truth. We must stand on principle, even if we stand alone, and that we must continue to fight for truth and justice. Those are the principles that we must remain loyal to. And those principles are not for sale. They are not up for trade. They are not up for sale. And there is a coalition that is on the ground in Palestine that is leading the fight on principle, and they are clearly being successful against the Israeli military mission.
Yes, and obviously in the past we've also heard, and we've heard even the late Maulana Ihsan Hendricks talking about Al-Aqsa in danger, and many of us have realized the danger that Al-Aqsa has been placed over the years, and we've seen the incursions over and over again, as recently as well. Last week we've seen with that flag march that had taken place. We know what it had taken place in the month of Ramadan. So from time to time we are going to be getting those incursions by the settlers, by the Zionist settlers, into Al-Aqsa, trying to make a point, trying to make a statement. But at the end of the day, it's still very, very encouraging in terms of what you have just described, Zakir, that, this is not going to be taken lightly. It's not going to be taken lying down.
Most definitely. I think even if we look at the microcosm of what's taking place now with the gas drilling platform of the coast of Lebanon, and how Israel is trying very hard to re-establish its deterrence equation, the one that I've spoken about earlier, that we can do as we please, it's now coming at a cost because that is both Palestinian gas as well as Lebanese gas. So Hezbollah has come out yesterday. The Secretary General said Nasrallah spoke yesterday, saying that we are going to attack that platform. You need to move it out of the area. Now we are in a position where we can dictate terms as Al-Muqawama al-Islamiyya, and I think we all consider ourselves part of this movement. We support the right of armed resistance of occupied people because it's an international right. It's nothing to be ashamed of. Number one. Number two, we support the right of justice for the Palestinian people. And we also support the right that we are not going to sit as spectators at a table. We are going to dictate the terms as equal. And this is what we are sitting in at the moment, is that the Palestinians are no longer these besieged, helpless people. They are people that have a voice, that have responded, and they are on the front lines defending Masjid al-Aqsa and the precincts of Al-Quds, Jerusalem. So we have to support them. We have to support the democratically elected representatives of the Palestinian people, Hamas, and this unity movement that has developed. We are in a crucial period of time as the Ummah. We cannot be on the side. We honestly cannot be sitting and not being involved in the Palestinian issue or discussing it because it's going to change the face of the Middle East and possibly even the world.
Well, Zakir, as always, an absolute pleasure linking up, talking to you, and getting your views. Jazakallah for that. Have yourself a wonderful Jummah as well. And inshallah, looking forward to further engagements.
Jazakallah, Jummah Mubarak to all the viewers and listeners. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Zaakir Ahmed Mayet with us this morning on Salam Media, geopolitical analyst. And yes, very, very encouraging in terms of what Zakir has mentioned, particularly looking at the unity within the Palestinians, within Palestine as well. And definitely, if Israel has got its sights on Al-Aqsa, on partitioning Al-Aqsa, it is not going to be an easy ride because the Palestinians and the Muslim world in general will not take this lying down. And that is a strong message, a strong signal that is going through to this Zionist occupier. The time is just gone 9:30 a.m. We come back. We'll be joined by Sheikh Mohammed Wadi. We're talking the 13th National Quran Memorization Competition.